My name is Monique Clark. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at SignGlasses. This is our sign for SignGlasses to reflect the fact that users are able to receive interpreting services through our smart glasses. I'm really happy and excited that we were finally able to connect together. I've been looking at your work for such a long time. And when you said you're ready, I was excited about that. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for inviting me to join you. I'm excited to have this opportunity to chat with you.
So, can you tell me your name, where you're from, and just a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Joe Toledo. This is my sign name. Yes, that's right. I'm a deaf interpreter, and I've done a wide gambit of different jobs. My background is that I'm Latino, and I'm very proud of my Latino heritage. My family is from Honduras. I was actually a first generation American. I was born in Florida, and now I live here on the East Coast.
So, you're first generation born here in America.
So my family is from Honduras, 100%. But myself, Joe, I was born in Florida. I grew up there. I'm a first generation American. My family moved there, for all those same typical reasons. They dreamed of a better life for their children, a better education for their children. So that's why they moved here, and that's where I was born. I am an American.
And tell us a bit about what you do for work.
Currently, I work as a full-time deaf interpreter. I travel all over the place. I do business events, private events. I go to Florida. I really am all over the states. But most of my work is in New England.
So, for those who may not know the difference between a certified deaf interpreter and a deaf interpreter, do you mind sharing the difference between the two, CDI and DI?
A CDI are certified, and that's what that C stands for in front of the CDI, meaning they have passed RID's written and performance test, and they are now certified. A DI, a deaf interpreter, and this is really based on state by state guidelines. They have been accepted because they've passed the state screening, they've been approved, they are licensed to work, and they are a DI. Now, understand they are very similar. They both follow the same code of professional conduct, the same boundaries, responsibilities, and roles are the same. A CDI is just certified at the national level, whereas a DI is just certified at the state level.
So, as a deaf interpreter, how long have you been in the field?
I first got started in 2014, and it's been about a 10-year journey of just really growing and learning and picking things up, understanding the role of a deaf interpreter and interpreting, and just picking all that up. So, about 10 years, a 10-year journey.
Many people don't understand what that looks like, having a deaf interpreter in the process. Some ask why. Even some hearing interpreters feel like I don't need a deaf interpreter team. But then there's many deaf people that say, hey, yeah, I do need a deaf interpreter in this process. So based on your experience, have you seen this before? Have you seen people say, no, I don't need a deaf interpreter?
Yeah, I do. Since the deaf interpreter profession started, it's been growing and expanding. But at first, the deaf community, they would say, no, we don't need a deaf interpreter. And the hearing interpreters would say, no, 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 we don't need you. And let me explain clearly. You see, the deaf community, they were resistant because when they felt like a deaf interpreter came, it spoke to their background, their education level, their communication style. And they were very resistant to deaf interpreters. And you have to understand that us deaf interpreters, we don't look down on anyone. We are just here to facilitate clear communication. And it doesn't really matter their language level, their background, if they're very smart and legal, if they're tech savvy, if they're very good at math or not. It didn't really matter. We're just here to make sure that communication is very clear. Now, the hearing community, the hearing interpreters, were very resistant to deaf interpreters because they felt like, hey, this is my work. This is my livelihood. I'm the interpreter. I'm the best person for the situation. And, you know, us deaf interpreters and the deaf community, we're very thankful to hearing interpreters. You've taken the time to study ASL, become interpreters. It's really to the benefit of the deaf community. You put their heart and soul into their work, but there are things missing. Like 60 to 70% of the facial expressions might be missing, body language is missing. It's not exactly ASL. It's not in the exact ASL structure. Most of the time, hearing interpreters are very strong in their English and they present it in English. Their signs are great, but their facial expressions, all the deaf structures could be missing, and it makes it very taxing for the deaf client to watch. Whereas we can put it in clear ASL and it lets the deaf client's eyes relax and there's just more understanding. Now, as our profession has grown, the hearing interpreters seem to be more and more accepting. That door is opening more and more, and they're becoming more welcoming, understanding that we can just work as one for a better experience.
It's the best interpreting experience to have a deaf interpreter team with a hearing interpreter team. The best experience to give to those deaf people who need it, for sure. Yes.
Yeah, I've noticed that as well.
In your experience working with a hearing team, do you have some amazing experiences? And then do you have some of those not so amazing experiences? Do you mind sharing either?
Yeah.
Is there so many?
Yes, a lot. I'm trying to think of so many situations. So many. Okay, I'll pick one. So I was asked to do a live interpretation that was going to be broadcasted live, and I was going to stand on stage, and it was last minute that he had asked me to do this job. And so the speaker, this was a very formal event. And so beforehand, I worked with the hearing interpreter, made sure that we were on the same page. We reviewed the script, got everything in order, and we were ready. So here comes the time. It was a live broadcast. I'm on stage. They're feeding me information, and I'm signing. But I noticed that the hearing interpreter couldn't quite catch everything that was being said because the speakers were black or Indian or Asian. They all had accents.
Accents, okay.
And so the hearing interpreter struggling feeding me information, and it's very choppy. And I'm signing in front of the audience, plus it's live, I'm being filmed, and it was just very like, oh my gosh, I wanted to be professional. And so I'm putting together the message as best I can to make it look smooth. And the hearing interpreter can't quite hear everything, so they're struggling to give me the information. And these chunks of information are coming very infrequently and choppy. And in the back of my mind, I'm trying to remember everything that was being scripted. So I'm just kind of adding things and trying to get things fed to me and, put it out in a nice professional manner. And that was very challenging. That was a very challenging experience.
Ooh, challenging.
Yeah, it was tough. But I call that highly demanding work, just highly demanding. But personally, I'm very thankful for that experience. I got to learn a lot about myself, how I was able to put things together and continue and not just give up or not just blame my team. Not at all. That's still my team. That was still my teammate, And that was important to me. I needed my team, and they tried their best. And afterwards, when everything was done, I sat down with my team and said, "What happened?" And they said, "Oh, it was the accents and the noise level, and I couldn't quite catch everything." And I was like, "Huh, okay." Kind of based on your background, based on what you had learned, you preferred a certain kind of accent or that was going to be easier for you, you know?
Such high stakes for this assignment. I wonder, did you get prep material ahead of time for this assignment?
So understand that we did get some information ahead of time. We had some papers that we could look over and we had everything worked out. We were good. And then the day of, they started adding all these guest speakers and they just started adding them. And that was unexpected. So we just kind of had to go with it. And so there was two of them that didn't have scripts. They didn't have anything for us. And we said, you know what? We will just go with it. We will just do it in the moment. So my interpreter was going to hear it for the first time, and then all those things kind of happened.
And it's showtime. The show must go on, and then things pop up. I get that. I think it's great how you handled that situation because it could have been a complete disaster. but you were able to manage and make it a smooth interpreting process. I see.
Yeah, that's right. You know how interpreters process.
More and more, as we work together, deaf interpreters and hearing interpreters, I see hearing interpreters at times saying, I don't know how to best team with a deaf interpreter. Do I feed only, or do I incorporate more gestures, or what's the best way to go about it? And so I wonder, is there enough time and space for the teams, deaf interpreters and hearing interpreters, to brief before the assignment starts to talk about best way to feed or best way, best practices, my preferences, and things like that? Oftentimes, do you have enough time to do that in your practice?
So I've done both turn taking and simultaneous. Um, Typically, we'll meet beforehand, making agreements of what we're going to do as a team, the hearing interpreter and myself. We'll meet before, like for this example, the doctor's office. We'll meet before that appointment, talk over terminologies, what our goals are for this assignment. And then we always do that beforehand. And then we walk into the place and we kind of punch in and we kind of become the elephants in the room, but we're very respectful of the doctor and the patient and that the goal is communication. So I did have a bad experience because in this example, I thought of this interpreter who had like 30 years or more experience of interpreting. And, beforehand, we had made some agreements of how we were going to handle things. But when we went in and started working, it was totally different. It was kind of like a slap in the face to me as the deaf interpreter to see this. What had happened in this example was that the hearing interpreter was listening to the doctor's question. They would give it to me. I would sign it to the patient. And then the deaf patient would answer, and the hearing person right away jumped in and started speaking for the deaf person and skipping my part of the step.
That's strange.
And it just threw me off. And it was awkward. And maybe the fourth time it happened, I said, what did they say? And they signed it to me, and I said, no, 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 no. I interpreted it in the correct way. And they were like, oh, you know? And I had to remind them that we're a team. It was an empowering conversation. But even after that conversation, they still were trying to exclude me. They were just having the interpretation without me. And then there was a point where the doctor left to get something. And, as interpreters typically do, we left the room out of respect for the client. And out in the hallway, I had this conversation. I said, I'm noticing a few things. And they said, oh, I've known this person for 20 years. And I said, it doesn't matter. They may know you, but you don't quite understand the boundaries and how our roles are defined. And your code of ethics that you kind of started with are not really up to date with what they are now. You're kind of more in the helper model. And, we have more roles and responsibilities, more boundaries. We're to be neutral in our interpretation and allow the client and the doctor just to have their direct communication and not be involved. And they said, oh, well, I have more experience than you. And I said, okay, yes, fine. Still, the point remains. And I noticed that interpreters who maybe have 30, 40, 50 years of experience haven't quite caught up to the current code of ethics. And so it was oppressive. It was oppressive to me. I didn't see them oppress the patient, but it was oppressive to me. And even though we had this discussion beforehand, when we went in to do the job, it was totally different.
Even still, first, I want to say I apologize that you experienced that, because it's as if we're already there to provide access. And then in turn, ironically, your hearing interpreter, who is your team, it does not support you or provide some oppressive actions to you in turn.
Yeah, that's right.
Not the best experience. So, wow. Do you have any idea how we can do better in that situation?
Yes, I do. Because I tend to, every time I work with an older interpreter, I encourage them to go to the RID website, go to conferences, review the information, go to workshops, go to presentations. Luckily I see those and I will say, hey, there's an event going on. Maybe you should go check it out. I try to be encouraging.
Oh, that's encouraging.
I'm certainly not like ordering people to do it, but I try to be encouraging, and some are open and receptive and some are very resistant. Some can't afford that. Some want to just stay where they are. It's a variety. And today, with technology and online um, webinars, I'm noticing that that's really a growing industry. So,
Okay, so along the lines of the subject of technology,
yeah, sure.
today we're starting to see so many improvements within technology that enhances our ability to communicate and really enhances our ability to communicate and connect worldwide, right? So just amazing enhancements. I often think about our community, deaf and hard of hearing community, and wonder, is the technology really advancing for deaf and hard of hearing community? Do you feel
I feel like it's 50-50.
50-50? Interesting.
Yeah, 50-50. Really, the point is that the deaf community has had access. We had our video phone when we first got video phones in DC, and Sorensen was kind of handing those out. But before that, there was other access to that. Um, the deaf community got used to using, video conferencing and video phone calls. And if you remember AIM, they had a video chat feature on there.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. So the deaf community already got used to that part. And then Sorensen came out and they had a new video phone they were giving everyone. And all of us were kind of already used to it, and we're kind of been used to it up until now. But we are tired of some things. There's tech issues. Sometimes the picture freezes. Sometimes you don't get a good quality interpreter. Sometimes the equipment that you receive isn't adequate. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the deaf community have just gotten used to the technology. It's always very exciting, and we see things growing, and you know, it's just gonna continue. There's no question. There's no question.
And how do you use technology in your work and in your everyday life?
My everyday life, it's odd. I used to use a lot of the video phone, but I've been transitioning. And now, I use a lot more FaceTime video conferencing more often than not. And now I notice that, Facebook's getting more popular, that video messaging, Instagram, that video messaging. It's just, I use those more often than my video phone. I don't use that as much.
Less video phones?
Yeah, I'm using it less. I really only use my video phone, if the doctor calls me or if the mechanic calls me, if something's ready, they call me. But really, I use the other three more often. If I want to order something, the technology is so different now. You can just use an app to order. You can use DoorDash. Um, some of the companies have their own website you can just go to and just order and pick up. Before you really were reliant on the video phone to say, oh, I want this and this and this. But now, that's been reduced. I don't use the video phone that much anymore. I really don't. I know there are others that maybe continue to use it, but personally, I don't use it that much.
So it seems as though you use the video phone to connect with the hearing world. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
So doctors, mechanics, things like that.
Yeah, that's right. It's usually when hearing people call me.
This is interesting how times have changed. I just wanted to go back to something you mentioned before where we talked about technology is advancing for deaf people. Yes, 50-50. I want to ask you, in your own dream state, if it was the perfect technology that's fitting for yourself or the deaf community, really, let's just focus on yourself. If it was perfect, what would that look like?
Ooh, that's a tough question. Um, huh. I wouldn't mind something like holographic. Like if you could interact with another person through a hologram, I think that would be helpful.
Yes, yes, right. That hologram.
Maybe you've seen in like movies, there's like a hologram that pops out when you hit a button and you could interact with it and it kind of goes away.
Yeah, I like that.
As the world develops their Wi-Fi capabilities and the services get better, it's a possibility. It could happen. We could have holograms.
To communicate anywhere.
Yeah.
Two questions come to mind as we've been talking today. Two things come up for me. One is related to the interpreting profession, and the other is related to technology.
Yes.
What message would you like to share with the interpreting community about working with deaf interpreters?
Well, I encourage you to have an open mind and an open heart when working with a deaf interpreter. It's becoming more prevalent. Before, it was such a hearing dominated profession, but open those doors, work with the deaf interpreters, have those discussions. Remember to become one, and that will lead to better communication together. Support each other. Hearing people will feel more comfortable as the deaf start to lead. And remember to let it be deaf led and not hearing led.
I love that. And it's such an important message. It's such an important message.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, the same question, but in terms of technology. So for those who are building technology, they often say, this is the new thing for deaf community. This is the new technology for the deaf community. And then we receive it and we say, this doesn't work well. Or you're building this for me, but without my deaf perspective involved in the process, which oftentimes doesn't make sense. So I would like to ask you, what would you like to be included, or what message would you like to include in that process?
Yeah, that's a good question. Uh, Thinking about that kind of takes me back. Technology, they used to kind of test on deaf people, the technology like FaceTime and text messaging are the two ones I'm thinking of. They would invest that into the deaf community because quote unquote, not quote unquote, let's erase that. The deaf community, they would be on Social Security income and they'd get monthly stipends, and then they would provide text messaging and provide FaceTime, and they would use high minutes and they wouldn't have any problem paying those bills. So they did this testing and it was working. They were saying, oh, okay. And then they kind of released it to the mainstream hearing community. And at first text messaging was 10 cents per text, and then they kind of changed it and now it's unlimited. But that's an example of, I wish that they would provide new technology to the deaf community. And they should really invest money into the deaf community, like $1 trillion to the deaf community. And then just notice what would happen and be thankful. And deaf people would use that technology and really support and help grow technology.
Yes, that's right.
Give those thanks, give that appreciation. But I don't see it. I look everywhere and I don't see any thanks or anything like that.
Yeah. I really didn't have an idea about this, what you're sharing, that this technology was shared or tried with the deaf community and there was no recognition provided. I know that deaf community uses this visual technology more than hearing people do.
And now, Gallaudet, they have that football helmet. Have you seen that? That kind of has a screen that pops down with the information. Have you seen that?
Oh, yes, I saw that and it was so awesome.
So that is the same thing, using the deaf community, kind of try out this and see what the feedback is. And does it work? They're winning? And the football team is like just crushing the other team. They're like, cool. And now it'll go mainstream with the hearing community and you'll see it everywhere. And will they say thank you to the deaf community? No, they will not. Tale as old as time.
Wow. And, I can think of so many things that were created in the deaf community and then there were no thank you. I can think of so many things, no contributions, no recognition. The same as with the BIPOC community.
Yep, same thing.
Where there's lots of work created, things are done, the first of its kind, and then there was no recognition or no thank you, no contributions to the community.
That's exactly it. That was beautifully said. And that same thing applies to the deaf community. And I'd like to add, I want to see more BIPOC being grown in our community. I've noticed that it's starting to grow, but we don't have enough. I'd like to really see it expand and have way more exposure. Each state really should have the opportunity to really support that community. Like, for example, brochures. A lot of times I see white people on there, but you need a little mixture, Black people, Mexican people. And so people of those communities can be more attracted to the work of interpreting and really support that cause. So yes, I'd love to see it really grow.
Yeah, you said it so beautifully because oftentimes we do see in our community that there's a wide diversity in our community, but then our interpreting profession doesn't accurately reflect that. You know, there is a predominantly white field, and then you go to interpret, just like you were mentioning before, some of the nuances are lost or the accents are not picked up because of their experiences, a frame of references, so we do need a more diverse, more accurately reflection of our beautiful population of our members, right? And I think is very important.
Yes, that's right.
And more mentorship would be amazing for people who want to become interpreters, but they don't see themselves reflected in the profession. Well, we need more mentorship so that we can arrive there successfully, right?
If you want to become a deaf interpreter, I say go for it. Don't sit back and wonder if you should. I say go for it, get a taste of it, do the trainings, see what it's like to do the work. Learn the interpreter's roles and responsibilities. Give it a taste. Try it out. And if you don't like it, you can always leave. Go back to your old job. There's other work you can do. Secondly, if you become a deaf interpreter, don't give up. Continue on your journey. Some interpreters might not support you. Some might not give you enough information to feel like you've done a satisfactory job. But don't give up. Continue. You will grow. Invest in yourself and you will thrive.
I'm really happy that we had the opportunity to have a discussion with you today about your experience and your journey as a deaf interpreter and your experience working with hearing interpreters and your encouragement to just keep an open mind that together we could be the best team. And I love that message. I wish everyone can see that. I hope everyone will see this.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us here at SignGlasses. And we love to provide accessibility and accommodations for deaf and hard of hearing communities through sign language, interpreting, and captioning, and various features we have to offer. So I'm excited that we were able to connect today. Thank you so much. And if any of you out there are interested in becoming a deaf interpreter, you have the perfect role model here today with Joe Toledo. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye.